Okay, I'm okay. I'm going to try to do something a little bit different today. We're going to go through a video. This is a video called "Something Funny Happened on the Way to the Moon." This probably kind of kickstarted quite a few skeptical careers after watching this, like uh, Phil Plait, the bad astronomer, because he wrote a book based off, I think, based off this or another document. Well, you call this a documentary is kind of a stretch, but this was made by Bart Sibrel, who's actually most known for being hit by an astronaut. Afterwards, he tried to force Buzz Aldrin to swear on the Bible that they actually didn't go to the moon. And Buzz is a very religious person and walked away. And Bart kept trying to bug Buzz, and Buzz knocked him down with a one punch. So we're going to go through some of the claims in this video. I had to do a little research, get refreshed on what about the video. But yeah, there was a lot of yeah, and well, and this also started probably Bad Astronomy, the website, and the Bad Astronomy and Universe Today uh, forums, and quite a few other things. And people still are not discussing it directly, but a lot of conspiracy theories are based off of this. The flat Earth cites a lot of the stuff that's in this, so we'll go through. We'll watch parts of it, and then I'll explain what's going on. I'm not the selector of the music. Bart is. This is all World War II footage and atomic bomb testing. An iceberg in the North Atlantic in winter or early spring. Go figure. Plus, you don't want to go down there in a sub controlled by a PlayStation controller. A little too soon. By then, Apollo actually already had Apollo 8 orbiting the moon. With the what is it? What level and I can't think of the other two. But uh, and if anybody's seen the movie Apollo 13, Level was in orbit of the moon again, but they didn't land on the moon. But they already had men orbiting the moon by then. The thing about the Hubble not being able to focus, I found this out when I didn't, waiting for a colloquium at a university I was attending, is that the company who was building the lens actually didn't report that the lens was or not the lens, the mirror was bad because they didn't want to redo the mirror and it would cost them money. So that's why there was the issue with the lens, with the mirror. Uh, but they did put a corrective lens on the Hubble telescope and it worked. But it wasn't the technology. It wasn't the technology. Is more a business decision than the technology. No, there were many trials before Apollo 11. Like there was the Mercury and Gemini program to get people into orbit, and then there was Apollo 1, which was a failed test and killed the three astronauts there of Gus Grissom, Ed White, and again I can't think of all three. Uh, but but they died because it was an 100% oxygen rich atmosphere in the spacecraft, and a spark lit up because somebody didn't correctly do the wiring. Um, and another thing that is Velcro was highly flammable, and there was a lot of Velcro in the spacecraft to help them place objects and keep them in one spot because there's no gravity in space. What is a SpaceX for footage? Here they're showing a lot of the failed launch attempts by rockets before they finally figured out how to do it, and that's part of science and engineering. Is you got to build something, is you got to experiment to figure out what's going on. Um, yeah, I made a wisecrack about SpaceX because they're doing the same thing now. Um, but that's what this is just. But this is showing all the failures, and they don't show the successes. Okay, this is the launch of Apollo 11, and Bart put images of some of the tragedies like famine and the war and such things. A lot of that is uh, political and has not. Here's the thing: the Apollo 11 program was one of the reasons they did it was to get up on the Russians. It was a part of the Cold War. They were in competition, which uh, way is going to see it: capitalism and democracy over socialism or over communism. There's a difference between socialism and communism. So that's why the Apollo program, they spent so much money on the Apollo program. But a lot of people still go, well, if we didn't have the space program, we can spend all this money on people. You can do both. It's just a matter of choice what you want to spend your money on. The Americans put a lot of the money in defense, and yes, lately there's a certain president that's been grumpy that they think other countries are not pulling their weight, but there wasn't kind of an agreement between countries that the U.S. would build the giant military and the other countries would build their own militaries to a point, and they'd work together. So here's the thing about the Van Allen radiation belts. It's very it's not a super dense cloud of radiation. Plus, when you're passing through it, it's more your dosage. Plus, it's a type of radiation. The type of radiation in the Van Allen radiation belt is mostly what they call alpha particles, which is the nucleus of helium atoms, and it can be blocked by a very thin layer of material. Um, they also bring up later fast moving electrons, uh, but that's something different. But it's most of these helium nucleuses or alpha particles are coming from the sun and are byproducts of the fusion reactions going on in the sun, and it gets trapped by our magnetic field. Without the magnetic field, a lot of this stuff would come down through the atmosphere, and probably would have made life a little bit harder for life on Earth. In future, to go to places like Mars or anything further afield, they do have to build up the shielding around where the people are going to be, or humans. Uh, some things are just like going to be like you could build a layer of water between the with two halls, an inner and outer hall, and place a water which would capture most of it. But the the best way of doing it, the way they think now, is just to try to get to Mars as fast as possible. But yeah, and another thing, yes, the Russians may have had more experience, but the Americans were willing to do anything to get there. Well, here's the thing. Uh, the radiation they're calling here is beta. It's beta radiation. It's a fast moving electron. If a fast moving electron goes through your body, it emits an X-ray. This is actually what causes X-rays. Is an X-ray gun or projector or whatever you want to call it sends a beam of electrons through your whatever they're trying to image, like your teeth, and when they go through, it gives off X-rays. It can build up a charge, but it's more the damage to the atoms and the molecules in your cells that will cause problems. Uh, and you'd have to have a fairly high dosage to do it. But but this could also cause like cancers and stuff like that. But yeah, it is something that they have to keep an eye on. But we also on Earth uh, get dosages of radiation from exposures to certain minerals and stuff in our daily lives. Okay, about the inflatable tanks, yes, that did happen, and that's part of war is deceiving your enemy to fake them out. Plus, another thing they did for that was they made General Patton the head of that army, and because the Nazis actually had a got a good deed on, um, actually had respect for Patton, um, and that's why they put Patton in charge of it. Plus, Patton was got people angry at him. Um, and about the Star Wars, I don't know uh, if they did that for Star Wars, but it's possible. They did all kinds of things to fake out the Russians at this time. Okay, the Manhattan Project was known, and there were spies at the Manhattan Project. There was one guy named Carl Fuchs who got the plans for it snuck or sneaked out of the probably neither word, but he hid the plans in the tires of his car and drove them out and sent them to the Russians. Uh, a lot of people who watched The Big Bang Theory probably heard of a guy named Richard Feynman. He's actually a very famous astronomer, not astronomer, physicist, but he was one of the junior scientists at the Manhattan Projects, and he actually borrowed Carl Fuchs's car. And on one trip, three out of the four wheels uh, he had to replace or fix while he's visiting his wife in Albuquerque because she had TB. Uh, there was 400,000 people working on the Manhattan, not on the Manhattan Project, on the Apollo program. Um, so the idea of that nobody would have blown the cover of the Apollo program is silly. And JFK was shot by Lee Harvey Oswald. Um, it's just this is the way the conspiracy theorists think. It's like, oh my god, it can't be just this one person who was crazy, but it's just the way they think. Here's the thing, it wasn't just the operators at NASA that was looking at this stuff. There was the Russians, and they were keeping an eye on the data coming back. Plus, before the Tetra satellite, there was a bunch of satellites called the Ranger programs and Surveyor. Ranger was mostly just flying by the moon, and Surveyor landed on the moon. So there was plenty of stuff going on before this, and other people observing it as well. This was more due to politics than it had to do with keeping a secret. Um, most congressmen said, "Okay, we'll help fund Apollo, but you have to build a facility in Houston, Texas, or in Huntsville, Alabama, or different spots throughout the states." That's what. Plus, there were already some independent sites like the Jet Propulsion Laboratory was already doing stuff before NASA came about. Oh yeah, a lot of the transmissions wasn't actually received by NASA. It was received in Australia because when they landed on the moon, the other side of the Earth was uh, visible from the moon, and there was the Parkes Observatory, radio observatory, was the ones that received the transmissions. Okay, if I was the first explorer going to a new land, I wouldn't take many pictures of myself. I'd be taking pictures of the new land. So that makes sense. Plus, when you stumble into a new area, you're not going to be taking all. You're going to take some pictures, but you're also going to be looking around, seeing how it looks like and stuff. Okay, and all the photographs that were taken by the Apollo program are available on NASA's website, or you just have to Google search it, and you can get a lot of the images taken for the program. He was a very private man. He has passed away, but he after NASA, he went to work at a university in Ohio and had a farm in a rural area in Ohio. He did. Some people don't like being in the press. He just, it's one of those things. He probably enjoyed doing the job and did. And after he did the job, he didn't want to make it about himself. Uh, there are some people who have to make everything about themselves, but he wasn't one of them. It depends on the situation, actually. If you're on if you're on a hill and something's not on the hill, the direction of the shadow will be completely different, and it could also be where the object is compared to the sun. So if two objects are 90 degrees from each other, the shadow from the objects will have shadows that are 90 degrees to one another. And it's just it's kind of simple, but yeah, if you have two poles like that are arranged in a similar location, they'll probably be parallel. Yeah. That is just due to the hot spot is due to just difference in the material. I think to be right before they landed, they had to scoot over a little bit to land, so the jets could have dispersed the material. But yeah, but it doesn't mean it's an artificial light. It's just a different shade. Plus, also you can see that some of the stuff in the foreground there's shadows and stuff. That could just be stuff in the foreground are more susceptible to shadows, and you got a different terrain in the foreground or in the background. Sorry, but reflection um, would be my first answer. It could be light reflected off the surface of the craft. That'd be my guess. Okay, I had to look up this on the Clovis website, which is Jay Winley's website. He's probably one of the best persons about the moon hoax. Uh, that is probably a hair that was on one, or a fiber that was on the photographic paper or at them when they made the photograph. And when they went back to the original, they wasn't there. If you were a prop master setting up a scene like that, you wouldn't leave something that marked quite clearly as that. That's what happened to the sea. A lot of these photos are copies of copies, or they're not the original negatives. So that could have been why that's here. I'm not a photographic expert, but that's could have been what happened. Here's the thing: the thrust would have stirred up a little bit of material, probably, but not that much because there's no atmosphere to keep it floating in the air. So if it did, it just came up and down. Um, Plus, there wouldn't be much of the. I don't think they were running that hot, but so that's probably why there's not a burn pattern. Plus, it's rock and it doesn't have much carbon in it, so there wouldn't be any carbon scoring or anything like that in there. Plus, also right before they touched down, uh, they probably cut the engines and just uh, drifted down. Yeah, it kind of drifted down. Plus, there was a sensor on the bottom of each of them that gave them about maybe a foot to before they actually touched down. So they probably shut off the engines before and let and the any dust that probably settled. Can you see the stars during daytime? When they were on the moon, they were actually during the lunar day. So if you can't, you wouldn't be even without like on Earth. What causes the blue sky is the atmosphere, the light scattering. Even if you didn't have the light scattering, the sun would be an awfully bright object on the moon, seen from the moon. So it would overpower all the light from the stars. Plus, the cameras they were used had a setting for a certain light level, and it wouldn't be able to pick up the stars. Michael Collins was never on the surface of the moon. They had Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong on the moon. The way the Apollo worked is you had a somebody stay in the command module orbiting the moon. So he probably, if he orbited the moon and went to the dark side while they were on the surface, he could have seen stars. The cameras were preset to a certain levels. Plus, they had pretty bulky gloves, so trying to fiddle with the camera settings while dealing with gloves is quite a challenge. Um, so even using thin gloves that most people use, it's hard to set modern cameras. So that's probably why they take this pictures of the stars. Again, you wouldn't be able to really see them because of from the glare from the sun. And plus, there's also the reflected light from the Earth would have affected the optics as well. To engineers and companies on Earth, you got to imagine there's 400,000 people, so it costs a lot of people money to hire a lot of these people, and a lot of them were like people who sewed buttons onto the seats and installed transistors into the computer circuits. This the $60 million for each of the vehicles. It, they were specialized vehicles for specialized tasks, and they were also made to fold up into the landing module. So, okay, probably not the best spending of money, but compared to some other people, it's actually was worth it. Assuming that they was done in a photographic studio. Okay, and about the flag moving, you can see the guy twisting it with his hand, and they had a rod in it to keep it uh, kind of out. But these are a lot of assumptions based off of their pre-existing ideas. I see a guy handling the flag, and it's moving because he's moving the flag. There's also the height of the jumps and stuff, which can't be done explained just by slow motion. Yeah. Okay, as I said before, the the station that actually took intercepted the signal was in Australia. So they had to send it from Australia to to, to Houston, uh, probably through copper lines. They just didn't have really that great technology to send it to each of the broadcasters. That's it. And about take different. Plus, it's also probably the reason why there's black and white was done from the surface of the moon. It's probably it took a lot lower bandwidth to send the black and white images than it did to send color images. So They only had so much power on the Apollo landing module compared to the command module, so uh, they only used black and white cameras. Okay, the way the communications usually ran between the astronauts and mission control was it was another astronaut there that talked back and forth, and that they'd probably just say reminding Neil to say something. Nothing much. A lot of that background is them checking on like all the astronauts had probes on them for medical reasons and making sure there's enough oxygen in the cabin and just general housekeeping things for them to keep an eye on during the mission. Okay, there's no proof that they were just a few hundred miles up, and the cutting of the crescent, that's just them inserting what they want to insert to make it look like that. But you can actually move cameras because in the future they'll show the camera's been moved to the back of the spacecraft, but they probably had it up close near the window to take these images and moved it back moved it around during the process of taking this video. I think this was meant more for playback for training and stuff than TV audiences, but could have been for TV audiences too. Yep. According to the narrator, but there's no proof that they were in low Earth orbit and then suddenly close to the moon. It looks like they were they were on the way to the moon or getting close to the moon. To me, it's pretty scummy to try to put think that these guys were out for profits and put people's lives at risk, just to make the money. It's a lot of these the contractors were also airplane manufacturers, and especially for the Vietnam War. So it's one of those low tactics. The reason why he retired early is because he was a Democrat and was associated with Kennedy and Johnson. Uh, Nixon was just voted into office, and he resigned so Nixon could put his own head of NASA in. That's all it was about. It was just politics. Uh, that was the top of their career. Most of these guys were in their 30s and 40s and were in the military beforehand, so and got a bump up to at least captain in the Navy or colonel in the Air Force. So they were pretty close to retirement for military personnel at the time. So that's probably why they retired. This is basically saying there's more to do in space than what we've already done, and we've only started. Right now, we're back into trying to go back to the moon and build bases so we can have long-term research on the moon, and especially in the South Pole, because near the South Pole there's a big crater called Shockley crater, and it's deep enough that where water can exist permanently, or ice can exist permanently. And he's just trying to inspire the next generation of scientists and to build the new infrastructure. That's standard policy, I think, for a lot of top secret documents. Is they have to allow 50 years before they can open them up. Right now, they're opening up because the current president of the United States is a conspiracy theorist. Um, but and his associate is also a conspiracy theorist. Um, hmm, okay, conspiracy theories existed before this, but and people believe the moon hoax was fake before this. I actually had I had family members who thought this was a hoax. But I think this kind of sparked off the last 20 years of conspiracy theories and that went along. We've had like the anti-vax movement. We've had or lately flat Earth for the last 10 years. And yes, we're still arguing flat Earth, and there's some scummy individuals in there that are making money off of the few people who actually believe in it. Um, and they had the final experiment where they went to Antarctica with a few flat earthers and a few normal people and actually a higher percentage of flat earthers than percentage of normal people went. and that a lot of the fallout from that. I think this is pretty much this is near the end of this documentary. I may go back through some of the older conspiracy theories or some of the older videos to show where things started. I hope some people enjoyed this. Have a good day and goodbye.